fires. The Italian government's preparing to rush through a new bill in an attempt to stop the death of a woman who's been in a coma for 17 years. Barbara, Sarah in London, 17 years, and this amount of controversy.
Indeed, it's been hugely controversial in Italy. It's the case of 38-year-old Eluana Englaro. Now, it's divided not only the deeply Catholic country, it's divided its parliament as well. Now, in November, Italy's highest court ruled that the 38-year-old's feeding tubes could be withdrawn, essentially ending her life. And just last week, she was taken to a clinic where she would have been allowed to die. But the case has sparked protests in several cities. And now Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi hopes that his bill will become law by Monday. Jane Azzopardi has the details.
This is the woman whose life and death has given rise to an unusual alliance between Italy's colourful Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi and the Catholic Pope Benedict XVI. These photos show Eluana Englaro when she was 21. Her father won't allow any new pictures to be taken because Eluana has been lying in a coma, receiving food through a tube for 17 years. At least she was until Friday. That's when doctors at this Italian clinic began removing the tubes, according to a court ruling and Eluana's father's wishes. But Berlusconi's government intervened, passing a decree to outlaw the removal of feeding tubes. On Monday, he'll lead parliamentary attempts to make that law, against the wishes of Italy's president. It's a case that's divided this traditionally Catholic country.
It is really an act of extreme urgency and necessity to intervene in this case, because otherwise a serious precedent will be created in our republic that could lead to legal euthanasia.
About Eluana, I think that what her parents decided is right, because they're the ones who suffer. Nobody can intervene by saying, don't do that, or whatever else.
In his Sunday address, the Pope reminded followers that human life must be protected.
Although disease is part of the human experience, we can't get used to it. Not only because sometimes it becomes a really heavy and serious burden, but also essentially because we are made for life.
Italy's Conservative government, anti-euthanasia protesters and Catholic officials hope the law will be passed in time to, as they put it, save Eluana's life. Her father says he's just following his daughter's wishes. He hopes the politicians will be too late and his daughter will be allowed to die with dignity. Jane Azzopardi, Al Jazeera.
Controversial issue that's been dividing Italy. Well, for more reaction on this story, we can cross live now to Rome and speak to Professor James Walston, an expert in Italian politics from the American University of Rome. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's just recap a few things. Italy's highest court had ruled that the 38-year-old's feeding tubes could be withdrawn. Now, they decided that in November. If the highest court decided that, why did the politicians decide to get involved?
This is all part of a much bigger fight between Prime Minister Berlusconi and the other powers of the state, the judiciary in particular, the president, as we saw last week, and indeed Parliament in some ways. And he has used this issue in order to increase the prime ministerial powers to the expense of the judiciary. The judiciary, as you said, the Italian Supreme Court pronounced on this issue 3 months ago, but the Parliament could have had passed a law since then, and indeed for the last 2 years they've been discussing this, but they haven't.
Now, Italy is a secular state, but the vast majority of the people are Catholic. Catholicism does not approve of euthanasia. We saw Pope Benedict XVI in that report. Just how vocal has the Vatican been on this?
The Vatican has made its position very clear. Both the Pope and the Church in Italy, the Conference of Italian Bishops, have made it very clear. They have used words, very strong words like murder. It would be an assassination if her feeding tubes were removed. So they've made it extremely clear that they disapprove.
The Italian media has been dominated by this story for months, really. Is public opinion really split?
The recent opinion polls suggest that Italian public opinion is in the favour of the family of Beppino Englaro, who has shown enormous dignity over these last few years. He has become a public figure. He has reacted very calmly to what is in many ways intense provocation. There were remarks by the Prime Minister the other day which were, your introduction said, very colourful. His remarks were extremely off-colour when he was making remarks about the fact that Eluana Englaro could still procreate and things like this. Beppino Englaro, her father, has not picked that up, but he did invite Prime Minister and President to come privately, he said yesterday, to come privately and see for themselves. So he's an extremely dignified man.
Well, the next few hours are going to prove critical for this case. Now, just remind us, Eluana is in a clinic now, and depending on what happens tomorrow, her feeding tubes could or could not be removed.
That is true. The amount of nutrition is being reduced, I gather. There is also some type of sedative being given to her so that the neurologists are extremely clear that she will not be suffering. What we think is going to happen is that by Thursday the bill will have passed both Houses of Parliament. What happens after that is anybody's guess, because there could be a standoff between the physicians who are looking after the case and Mr. Englaro together against Parliament, because presumably the President would sign immediately a law, and the other powers of the state. Or on the other hand, in 4 days, I understand that she will still be alive, but what will have happened in those 4 days, I don't know. In medical terms and in legal terms, we're also on very, very uncertain ground.
James Walston from the American University of Rome, thank you very much for talking to us.